The rain didn't fall that night, it attacked. Sheets of water slammed against the windows as thunder cracked over the small town of Brooksville. Inside a warm, candlelit living room, Susan Campbell, 64, stood frozen in disbelief. Her son, Ethan, eyes cold as glass, had just pointed toward the door. "Mom, you can't stay here anymore," he said, voice steady, merciless. "Dad's gone. It's time you learned to take care of yourself." The words sliced deeper than any storm could. Susan blinked, her throat tightening. "Ethan, this is our home. Your father left you that," he interrupted, tossing an old, rusted key onto the table. "The lawyer said it's yours now. An old garage outside town. That's all." Her heart sank. A garage? After 37 years of marriage, that was her inheritance? Ethan turned away before she could answer. The door shut behind her with a soft, final click, the sound of blood turning into strangers. Outside, the cold wind whipped her coat as she stared at the key in her trembling hand. The rain mixed with her tears until she couldn't tell the difference. In that moment, she realized something terrifying. She had nowhere left to go. She walked down the road, headlights flashing past, her suitcase soaked and heavy. Every step echoed with Ethan's voice, "Useless old woman." But somewhere deep inside, under the grief and humiliation, something small stirred, a question she didn't yet dare to ask. Why had her husband left her the garage, and nothing else? The storm refused to let up as Susan dragged her soaked suitcase down the deserted highway. Her umbrella had snapped half a mile back. Now, only stubbornness kept her moving. Every lightning flash lit up the empty road, and the pain carved into her face. She hadn't eaten all day. Her mind spun like a broken reel, replaying Ethan's words. "Take care of yourself." As if 30 years of holding that family together had meant nothing. She'd been the glue, the quiet hand behind every success. Now she was just an inconvenience. After an hour, she reached the outskirts of town. The streetlights thinned until only the moon and her phone flashlight guided her. When the navigation app finally buzzed, she looked up to see it, a crumbling, ivy-covered building at the edge of a forgotten lot. The garage. Its paint peeled like old memories. A single rusted sign hung crooked, "Campbell Repairs." Her husband's handwriting still faintly visible beneath the grime. She hadn't been here in decades, not since he'd stopped fixing cars and started wearing suits. She fit the key into the lock, hesitating as thunder rumbled overhead. The door creaked open with a sound like a ghost breathing. Inside was silence, dust, the faint smell of oil and time. A cracked workbench stood in the corner, tools long abandoned. Cobwebs hung like drapes. But on one wall, perfectly untouched, was a framed photo of her and her husband, smiling in front of that very garage. Under it, in his handwriting, "If you're reading this, you've survived more than you think." Her breath caught. Beneath the photo sat a small metal box, its lid sealed with wax. She knelt down, fingers trembling, and broke the seal. Inside, a letter, addressed to her, and dated 10 years before his death. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. The wax seal was cracked, the edges yellowed with age, but her husband's handwriting was unmistakable, neat, deliberate, and calm. "To my Susan, for when the storm comes." Her hands shook as she unfolded it. The first line blurred behind her tears. "If you're reading this, it means the truth couldn't stay buried forever. You deserve to know everything, not the version they fed you, but what really happened to the Campbell fortune, and why Ethan can't ever find out." Susan froze. Her heart thudded in her ears. The fortune? He'd told her the business failed years ago, that debts had swallowed everything. "When I left corporate work, it wasn't because I failed. It was because I discovered who was behind the missing funds, and they made sure I'd disappear quietly. The garage became my cover, and my vault." Her pulse quickened. She looked around, the flickering light from her phone casting shadows on the old shelves. "A vault? Here?" The letter continued, each word cutting through her confusion. "Ethan was too young to understand. I wanted to protect him, but they bought his loyalty before I could stop them. That's why he turned against you. They told him lies, the same way they threatened me. But if you're reading this, Susan, you hold the key, literally." Her gaze fell to the rusted key still hanging from her neck. Not just any key. The key to the vault. The rain outside had quieted, replaced by the hum of wind through the rafters. She felt something shift inside her, fear giving way to something harder, older. He hadn't abandoned her, he'd left her a mission. And as she folded the letter back into the box, she whispered to the empty room, "I'll finish what you started." But as the last echo of her voice faded, she didn't notice the shadow moving past the cracked window, or the glow of headlights pulling into the lot. The engine's growl broke the silence outside, low and deliberate. Headlights swept across the cracked garage windows, stretching long shadows across the floor. Susan's pulse quickened. She clutched the letter against her chest, instinctively stepping backward into the dark corner. The car door creaked open. A man's silhouette appeared in the rain, tall, in a black overcoat, carrying an umbrella but not using it. He walked straight toward the garage, boots splashing through puddles. Susan's mind raced. Who would come here at midnight, in a storm, to an abandoned workshop no one remembered? Her husband's words echoed in her head, "If you're reading this, you've survived more than you think." The door pushed open, hinges screaming. The man stepped inside, his voice low, calm, unervingly polite. "Mrs. Campbell, I presume?" Her breath caught. "Who are you?" she demanded. He smiled faintly, but it never reached his eyes. "Let's just say, I'm an old friend of your husband's. I heard you finally opened his little gift." Her fingers tightened around the letter. "What do you want?" He took a slow step closer, dripping rain onto the concrete floor. "The same thing everyone wants, Susan. What's hidden in this place?" "You see, your husband made promises before he died, promises he didn't keep." She forced herself to hold his gaze. "You're wasting your time. There's nothing here but dust." He chuckled softly, glancing around the room. "Then you won't mind if I take a look?" Susan's heart hammered. The letter had mentioned the vault, but not where it was. She couldn't let him find it. Thinking fast, she kicked the metal box under the workbench, hiding the faint clatter under the thunder's growl. The man turned sharply. "Careful, Mrs. Campbell. Secrets make people disappear." Then, with a faint smirk, he added, "Just ask your husband." And in that instant, she realized, he knew everything. Susan's mind raced. Her husband's note, "You hold the key," echoed like a warning, not a comfort. The stranger's eyes wandered across the garage, predatory and precise, landing on every shadow, every box, every memory. She forced her voice steady. "You said you were his friend. Friends don't sneak into places at midnight." He smiled coldly. "And wives don't hide from the truth." He began to pace slowly, dragging his fingers along the old workbench. His ring scraped the surface, a deliberate sound that made her flinch. Then he stopped beside the faded photograph on the wall. This place was his sanctuary, wasn't it? Too bad he didn't tell you what was really buried here. Buried. The word struck like lightning. Her husband's handwriting had always been full of small clues, metaphors that meant something literal. "The garage became my cover, and my vault." Susan's breath caught. She glanced at the cracked concrete floor. There, beneath a thin layer of dust, she saw it, a faint outline, circular, like a sealed hatch. Her pulse quickened. The man noticed. He followed her gaze, lips curling into a knowing grin. "Ah, so you do know." Before she could move, he lunged forward. But Susan wasn't the same woman who'd left that house in tears. She grabbed the nearest thing within reach, a rusted wrench, and swung. It connected with his arm, hard. He grunted, stumbling back. "You don't get to touch his legacy," she shouted. He recovered fast, eyes burning. "You think you can stop this? You're 20 years too late. That vault doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the people who made him vanish." Thunder shook the walls. The man reached into his coat, and Susan froze, expecting a weapon. Instead, he pulled out an old key identical to hers. "Looks like you weren't his only secret," he said softly. Then, as another bolt of lightning flashed through the window, the hatch in the floor rattled, as if something beneath had just unlocked itself. The sound was deep and metallic, a dull clunk from beneath the floor, followed by the slow grind of hidden gears. Susan froze, her heart pounding in her ears. The stranger stepped back, equally startled, as the concrete circle began to shift and rise. Dust spiraled into the air like smoke. Neither of them moved. The air in the garage thickened, charged with something that felt almost electric. Then, with one final click, the slab lifted just enough for the darkness below to breathe. A wave of cold air escaped from the vault, carrying the scent of oil, rust, and time. The man smirked. "He really did it," he whispered, almost in awe. "The old fool left it right under your feet." Susan gritted her teeth. "Whatever's down there, it's not yours." "Oh, Susan," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "If it wasn't mine, I wouldn't already have a key." She stepped between him and the hatch, clutching her wrench like a weapon. "You don't know what you're opening. You don't know what he sacrificed." He raised an eyebrow. "Sacrificed? You mean stole. Your husband didn't protect a legacy, he hid evidence. He was working for them." "Them?" "The same people he claimed to expose," the man hissed. "He played both sides, Susan. And when it went wrong, he buried the proof right here." Susan's chest tightened. Could that be true? The man's tone, his certainty, it cracked the faith she'd been clinging to. But then she remembered the letter. They told him lies, the same way they threatened me. Her husband hadn't lied. He'd warned her. "You're lying," she said through clenched teeth. He smiled faintly. "Then open it and prove me wrong." The wind outside screamed through the broken window, and rain began to fall again, harder this time, relentless. Susan crouched beside the hatch, slid the rusted key into its slot, and turned. The vault groaned open, inch by inch. Inside, in the dim light, she saw what looked like a stack of old journals, a faded family photo, and a small metal device with a blinking green light. The man's smile vanished. "You shouldn't have touched that." The light turned red. And then the power went out. The world snapped into darkness. Only the rain on the roof and Susan's quickening breath filled the silence. Then, a soft electronic beep. Another one. Faster this time. The tiny red light on the device pulsed rhythmically, like a warning heartbeat. "What did you do?" the man shouted, his silhouette barely visible in the flashes of lightning. "I opened it." Susan's voice shook. "That's what you wanted, isn't it?" "Not like that," he barked, lunging forward. She stumbled back, gripping the metal edge of the hatch. Her hand brushed the stack of journals, their pages soaked in oil and age. One slipped open, revealing a symbol she didn't recognize, two interlocking triangles, inked over and over again across the margins. Beneath it, her husband's handwriting trembled across the page. "If they find this, it ends with us." The beeping accelerated. "Step away," the man ordered. His calm facade cracked, his voice carried the panic of someone who knew exactly what the device could do. He built in a fail-safe. "That's not evidence, it's a trigger." Susan's heart pounded. "You're lying again." He pulled a flashlight from his pocket, flicking it on. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating her husband's name engraved on the metal device. "Property of J. Campbell, Project Eclipse." "What is Project Eclipse?" she demanded. The man didn't answer. He was scanning the room, muttering to himself. "There has to be a cutoff switch." He wouldn't. "Wouldn't what?" He met her gaze. "He wouldn't leave it armed." The red light stopped blinking. For a moment, there was silence again, deep, suffocating silence. Then the light turned blue. A faint hum rose from the vault, followed by a flicker on the small cracked screen of the device. A video began to play. Her husband's face appeared, ghostly pale and exhausted. "If you're watching this," his recorded voice said, "then it means I failed to stop them." Susan's legs gave out. She fell to her knees, staring at the screen as her husband continued, voice trembling. "They'll come for the truth, for you, and they'll use my name to bury it all over again. Don't trust anyone, not even the ones who call me friend." She looked up slowly, her eyes locking on the man standing above her. And in that moment, she understood. He wasn't a friend. He was the one her husband had warned her about. The blue glow from the device painted the room in eerie shadows. Her husband's voice continued, calm but trembling. If someone stands beside you when you find this, they're not there to help you. They're there to finish what I couldn't stop. The words hit Susan like a bullet. Slowly, she turned toward the man, the so-called friend. His face was frozen, caught between rage and panic. Turn it off, he demanded, stepping forward. Susan backed away, gripping the wrench tighter. Who are you really? He sighed, dropping the pretense. Names don't matter. But your husband, he wasn't who you think. He built this, he gestured toward the device, to blackmail powerful people. We were supposed to clean it up. But he ran, disappeared, and left the mess to me. Clean it up, she snapped. You mean erase it? His tone hardened. You don't understand, Susan. This isn't about politics or money. It's about control. What's in that vault could collapse markets, expose military projects, rewrite the narrative of entire nations. Lightning flared through the window, revealing his hand, shaking slightly, but not from fear. From restraint. She took a deep breath, her mind racing. Then why didn't you destroy it years ago? Because, he said slowly, I thought he'd already done it. Until the Canadian started digging. He stepped closer, and Susan could smell the rain on his coat, the metal on his hands. I'll give you one chance. Walk away, and this ends quietly. She stared at him, her husband's voice still echoing in the air. Don't trust anyone. No, she said coldly. Not this time. He lunged. They collided hard, crashing against the workbench. The flashlight spun across the floor, casting wild circles of light. The device slipped from the vault, landing between them with a metallic clang. A digital timer appeared on its screen, 0:59 and counting down. The man's eyes widened. What did you? I didn't do anything. He cursed, diving for the device. Susan kicked it away, sending it sliding beneath the old truck parked in the corner. The timer hit 0:45. Panic surged. The rain outside turned to hail, hammering the tin roof like gunfire. Get out, the man yelled. Now. But Susan didn't move. She looked at him, her face hard and calm. You wanted the truth? You're going to face it, right here, with me. The timer hit 0:30. And for the first time, the man's mask broke completely. God help us, he whispered. The countdown screamed in the silence. Beep, beep, beep. Each second landed like a hammer against Susan's chest. The digital glow of the timer painted their faces red, pulsing faster, louder, until it felt alive. 00:29. 00:28. The man stumbled toward the truck, slipping on the oil-slick floor. Move, he barked. If that detonates, it's over, not just for you, for everyone. Susan didn't move. Her eyes burned through him. You think I'm scared of the truth? He turned, eyes wild. This isn't about fear, it's about survival. Thunder split the sky, and the garage trembled. The beeping quickened. 00:17. 00:16. She lunged forward, yanking the nearest toolbox from the bench, throwing it aside until she found a thick metal crowbar. You said he was lying, she shouted. You said he built this to blackmail the world. The man's voice cracked as he dove under the truck. He did. And now you've triggered it. She crouched beside the open vault, the journals still half-soaked in rain and oil. Flipping one open, she found another handwritten note taped inside. Eclipse is not destruction. It's revelation. Her breath hitched. She looked at the device again, the humming, the heat rising from it, and suddenly realized, it wasn't a bomb. It was a broadcast. He wanted them to see, she whispered. What? The man barked, crawling out, his face drenched in sweat. He wanted the world to see what they did. The timer flashed 0:10. The man's eyes went wide. Oh, no. 00:08. 00:07. Susan sprinted for the truck, reaching under it just as the screen brightened with static. A blinding white light filled the room. For a heartbeat, everything froze, the rain, the thunder, even time itself. Then, silence. The light faded. The screen showed a live transmission, not an explosion, but an upload bar. 95%. 96%. 100%. And then her husband's face appeared again, but not the tired one from before. This time, he was defiant, his eyes fierce. If you're watching this, they failed to silence us. The truth is free now. Susan stared at the screen, trembling. The man stood frozen, pale as ash. Across the world, in newsrooms, phones, and satellite feeds, encrypted files began unlocking themselves. Videos, documents, contracts, every secret the powerful had buried under Project Eclipse. The truth didn't explode. It erupted. Susan fell to her knees, tears mixing with rain. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. The man turned slowly toward her, his voice hoarse. You just started a war. The storm outside had stopped, but the world was already in chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance, and flashes of police lights painted the walls in red and blue. The screen on the vault flickered for the last time before dimming to black, its job done. Project Eclipse had gone global. Susan stood amid the wreckage, breathing hard, her soaked hair clinging to her face. The man, the one who had tried to stop her, was slumped against the wall, staring blankly at the dead screen. You think they'll thank you for this? He muttered. You just tore open every secret they ever buried. Governments, corporations, they'll come for you first. Susan looked at him, her eyes steady. Let them come. I'm done living in their silence. He gave a hollow laugh. You think truth wins? Truth doesn't survive the system. It just gets buried under new lies. Maybe, she said quietly. But tonight, at least, it screamed loud enough to be heard. She grabbed her husband's journal and stepped toward the door. The rain had eased into a mist, and through it, the flashing lights of approaching agents grew brighter. She could already hear the helicopters circling overhead, the sound of panic disguised as order. Inside the vault, the final pages of her husband's notes fluttered in the wind. A single sentence stood out, scrawled across the back cover. When truth burns, power melts. As Susan stepped into the night, the first camera flashes went off. Reporters shouted her name, demanding answers. Her voice cut through the chaos, calm, unbroken. You've all been fed stories. Tonight, you'll finally hear the truth. Half the world was already awake, their screens lighting up with the files she'd unleashed. The other half would wake to headlines that would shatter the illusion of safety. Eclipse files leak, global conspiracy exposed. And somewhere deep in the chaos, a single question echoed louder than any headline. Was this the end of corruption, or just the beginning of the reckoning? Susan looked up toward the dawn breaking through the clouds. For the first time in years, the light didn't feel artificial. Sometimes the truth doesn't come quietly, it crashes through the noise, ripping down the walls built to contain it. And when that happens, those who tried to silence it realize too late, you can't cage what was born in fire.